Good evening, everybody. This is Arun from Samera here, and I'm joined tonight by Smita and Dr. Barry Oulton. Barry I've known for a long while now, and he's the brains and the clever man behind the Confident Dentists, and Barry's had a very successful practice down in Surrey. And Smita, as you may know, is the principal dentist of the Neem Tree. So Barry tonight's going to share with us his knowledge and expertise about communication and the language of communication in dental practice. And Smita and myself will be interjecting and asking some questions as we go along. Over to you, Barry. Take it away.
Great, thank you. Thank you both for having me. And yeah, I'm looking forward to actually sharing some bits and pieces that have made a big difference to me and impacted my business and home life. And actually the things that I'll share today, you can pretty much go and implement tomorrow. And if you're playful, you'll start to see the positive benefits of learning some bits about language. So we had the title, The Conscious Use of Language, Improving Your Patient Experience. But for me, when I learned these bits that I'm going to share, is that there's one important word in there that hasn't been highlighted, and it's your. Because actually, by learning some of the things that we'll talk about tonight, what we're actually going to do is not only improve your patient experience, but improve your experience. Whether you're a dentist, an assistant, or part and parcel of the team, some of the bits that we're going to share will actually impact your business and then personal life. And realistically, what I'm going to do, if I could give you a gift on this webinar, the gift that I would give you is to make you consciously aware of what you're communicating and that the people that you're communicating with are understanding you, and making you consciously aware of some things that you already know, but only subconsciously. So I'd like to just briefly delve into what communication is. And the definition of communication is the imparting or exchanging of information. Now in NLP terms, we have a number of different presuppositions, but the reasons I'd be keen to share what I know about communication that I've learned in the last 10 years and the benefits of learning to increase the quality of our communication is that it improves relationships. Without a doubt, learning some skills avoids conflicts. Certainly in my business, and I'm sure after this in yours, there's been an increase in profits. And without a shadow of a doubt, there's been creation of harmony, both at work and at home. So how do we communicate? There are three main ways that we do communicate. Now, I'll ask you guys, right? Smita and Arun, if this was 100%, and if you know the figures, then that's fine. But when I first did a sales training course about 20 years ago, I was told that the majority of our communication was the words that we were using. And so almost all of what we did was based on the words. And what we know nowadays from this research by Albert Morabian, he did some research. It was a specific situation, and it was really based around emotion and in lectures where words are actually only more than 7%, which is, goes against what I was taught 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's really shocking, actually, Barry, because, we were always taught, I suppose, historically that words, be careful what you say, and the first impression that you make with your words is the biggest impression. So that really surprises me that it's only 7%.
Yeah, it's less than we thought many years ago. In the days of Dale Carnegie, pretty much words was all we had. Now, what I want for anybody that I interact with is I'd like to be able to help them have as much of that 7% as possible. I'd like you to have 100% of this. So there's a lot of language skills and language patterns. And yet, we communicate every day non-verbally. So the next area that we use and we communicate with is our tonality. And from Morabian's research, tonality is 38% of our overall communication model.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
So let me give you an example of that. I'm going to use the same words, but I can change the meaning of the words with the tone that I use. So if I was to look at you, Aaron, and point and go, naughty boy, you would know that the meaning behind those words. However, if I look at you and go, naughty boy, that's a completely different meaning. And so the words are there and important, but the tonality can change the way that we interpret and we come up with a meaning for them.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
Sure,
got that.
Yeah.
It's a good example.
Okay, it's a brief second one is sarcasm. If I say, Smita, nice jacket, you go, oh, thanks, Barry, that's really nice. If I go, Smita, nice jacket, it completely changes the meaning, okay?
Cool.
Now, I'll come to why I want you to know this in a second. The final thing that we communicate with is our physiology, our body language. And, you know, our face-to-face communication is a continual loop of both our verbal and our non-verbal messages. And so, you know, we have an internal representation of what people are meaning. And the reason I want people to get a grasp of this is that if we just think that our words are what we communicate with, very often we're going to be miscommunicating, because we need all three of those things to be aligned. In other words, to be congruent. And that means that if I'm going to be saying hello to my patient, you know, hello, yeah, it's nice to see you. My words say that, hello, it's nice to see you. But if I've got my back turned to them in the surgery, and if I've got that tone of the fact that I'm stressed because I've got to finish notes, or I've just had a tricky procedure, then I'm actually communicating to that patient that I'm not happy to see them. So it's about recognizing that these three things need to be aligned when we're communicating.
Sure.
Yeah.
Barry, if I know it's probably quite relevant in the press today, is the whole US presidential midterms, okay? And if you look at how Donald Trump, how he's managed to convince all the people over the last 2 years, his words, it's 7% if you think about it. And as you mentioned, okay, so the people aren't listening to his words, okay, which people are claiming they're all fake lies or not, okay. They're observing his physiology, they're observing his tonality, which are his methods of communication. The words are irrelevant, really, okay.
Yes.
And that's just a very kind of general way, topical example we're seeing in the market or in the world today, really. And that manifests down into the surgery as well when you're dealing with people as well.
Yeah, and it's worth, I mean, I think you make a very valid point. I think it's worth remembering that today's politicians are very well taught in how that they should communicate. And, you know, what we know actually is that our words, as we'll talk later, our words are a conscious communication. Our tonality and our physiology work on a subconscious level. And so those people in those positions have been taught how to communicate, and oftentimes it's a lot more about the non-verbal communication rather than the words, because you're right, I can use words and completely change the meaning with my physiology, my body language, and my tonality.
Yeah,
so,
you can make yourself sound very disingenuous if you wish to, purely by physiology, right?
So absolutely, and this is it, right? Because when you begin to learn this model of communication and another one later, this is only making you consciously aware of what you already knew. You've had it where somebody's said to you, oh, I like your hair. And you thought, actually, you don't, do you?
Yeah.
You know, so we know this. We know this. And in NLP, we have these things called presuppositions. Presupposition is just it's a fancy word of saying it's a belief. It's something that we believe to be true. And there's 13, but 3 of them that they all relate to communication. And, we haven't got too much time to go through every single one, but the 3 that are related to what I want to share tonight is that we cannot not communicate. The meaning of the communication is the response that you get. And if you're going to learn some new things, there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. So if we take that first one, we cannot not communicate. You know, whether we know or we like it or not, we're always communicating. And we're either communicating verbally or non-verbally, and even when we don't intend to. So non-verbal communication includes our posture, our tone of voice, our facial expressions, muscle tension, our breathing, even silence, right, is a form of communication. And it's not just expressed through our words, as we know, which is 7%. Through our body language alone, we can convey messages without having to utter a word. You know, our head movements, hand gestures, a smile or a sigh, these are all elements of non-verbal communication. You know, when we nod our head, we're kind of giving an affirmative instead of using the word that means yes, and with our hand gestures to communicate much of the time without having to do anything verbally. So it's worth remembering this, because if we're going to use words, we want to make sure that we're aligned with our physiology. And if we're not using words, we just need to be mindful what we're communicating. And part of getting the response, the meaning of your communication is the response that you get, is in a past life, clearly not now, and obviously not you two, but I've had situations previously where I've said, I've explained this to him 3 times. He just doesn't get it. He's stupid. And actually, what I now recognize and accept is the meaning of my communication is the response that I get. If I get a response that somebody doesn't understand me, it's my responsibility to change how I explain it, particularly with a patient. I've had it before 10 years ago when I've explained something, I've gone out of the room and the patient's gone, what did he mean? And I'm sure every single dentist listening has that situation where the nurse then explains it in a different way. And actually the patient goes, oh, right, I understand now.
Yeah.
So I want us as clinicians to grasp that it's our responsibility to ensure that our patients and the people who we're communicating with, whether they're loved ones or not, fully understand what it is that we're saying. Because there are a number of areas where we can miscommunicate. The first is what you said, what you say to your patient. Let's say it's a patient. The first is what you said. That can be miscommunicated. The second is what you meant when you said what you said. It's what your patient heard, because they might hear something different, because we all, process information in a slightly different way. And actually what your patient thought you meant to say. So these are the 4 areas that we as master communicators need to be aware of. And by the way, you can replace the word patient with anybody that you're actually communicating with.
Yeah. So you can see that there's a lot of room for error and a lot of room for miscommunication within all of these points, because at any point things could be misinterpreted.
100%. Let me give you an example.
Yeah.
Unless you make it clear, you're going to end up mopping up a puddle.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's a good one. It's a good example.
And so if I was writing this or even this next one, my responsibility is to ensure that I'm not making things ambiguous. And actually, my responsibility is to ask the question of, do you understand? Have I made that clear?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very clear here. Thank you.
Yeah. The third thing that I mentioned is, for me, there's no such thing as failure. There's only feedback.
Yeah.
Right. So when I come along and if I don't get the right result, if I don't get the result that I wanted or expected or was hoping for, I used to beat myself up. I used to internally, have a dialogue of, you idiot, you got it wrong. But nowadays, I just see it as it telling me that actually I need to change something in order to get a better result. The way that I did it didn't work. And so when you learn some of these language skills, it's important to take it as being playful and catching each other out and, doing some team building exercises or just some lunching and learning. And so the first thing, to get to some nuggets now, let me just briefly tell you a story. I've got several business coaches. One of them is my American coach in NLP and my business, The Confident Dentist. And he's married to a lovely lady called Kayla. And this one particular day, Kayla, they live in Los Angeles, and she was driving down this coastal road, looking out to the sea, and she saw the most beautiful, stunning sunset. So much so, she phoned her sister up. She said, "Hey, Julie, you've got to go outside and look at the sunset." And Julie was like, "Kayla, I'm watching TV." No. Kayla said, "Please, it's the most beautiful colors I've ever seen." So Julie got up, opened the door and went, "Oh, for goodness sake, Kayla, it's just a flipping sunset," and hung up on her. And Kayla was like, "Oh my goodness me." Got her iPhone out and photographed it, took a load of photos, thinking, I'm going to get home and show Michael this. So she drives all the way home. She gets out the car, goes into Michael, goes, Michael, you need to have a look at this sunset. She starts flicking through the photos on her phone. And Michael goes, "Kayla, it's just a sunset." And Kayla lifts her glasses onto the top of her head and goes, "What?" And she realizes that through the whole drive, she's been wearing these rose-tinted glasses. Now, you've heard this phrase, right?
Yeah. That's
And
right.
rose-tinted glasses created the image that she was seeing, but everybody else who didn't have the rose-tinted glasses on was pretty much seeing this.
Yeah.
And the reason I tell that story is that when we get up in the morning, without realizing it, we're putting on a pair of glasses called mindset. And the mindset that we stand up with in the morning can be affected by all sorts of things going on. It can be affected by, things that happened yesterday, or you get up and the dog has made a mess on the carpet or something like that. And what we don't often realize is that we get to choose our mindset. And for me, this was a big one that we've introduced into our practice. So to give you a demonstration, I want you two to get involved with this, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh.
What I'd like you to do, I want you to have a look around the room that you're in right now,
Okay.
and everybody else on the webinar. Have a look around the room, and I want you to pretend you've got a pair of glasses on, which are the mindset of the world is a dangerous place. So mindset's like a pair of glasses. The world is a dangerous place. As you look around that room now, I want you to begin to notice what you see. So tell me what you're seeing when you're looking around that room. The world is a dangerous place. What can you see?
Cracks.
Okay, what else?
Lots of cracks. I can see sheets of paper, which things that I won't achieve to do.
Okay. What else is dangerous that you're aware of when you look around?
Scissors, glass.
There we go. Scissors, glass, electricity.
Yeah. Wires.
Tripwires, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So with a mindset of the world is a dangerous place, we get to see what it is that we're thinking of, right? So scrub that. Did you ever own an Etch-a-Sketch as a kid?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember how to clear the screen? You had to shake it.
Yeah.
So shake your head for me.
Done.
Thank you. Right, we're gonna put a different pair of glasses on. Okay. This mindset is the world is full of beauty and love. The world is full of beauty and love. Now, look around the same room. Nothing has changed in that room, but with the mindset of the world is full of beauty and love, just have a look around and tell me what you notice.
Each other, Barry.
Perfect, right? What else?
Soft carpet.
Okay. And computer systems, electricity, the ability.
Cracks of experience, cracks of well-being.
You see?
Yeah.
So with a different mindset, we reframe the information that we're getting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the first thing I'd like to say to anybody listening is, what we'll make available is a 2-minute mindset exercise. Can we do a downloadable form?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I've written a 2-minute mindset exercise where you take your team through that we just did, but you actually take a little journey walking around the practice, and you notice the things that are dangerous because the world's a dangerous place. And then you put your glasses on, the world is full of beauty and love, and you get the team to notice, what they notice with that mindset. Then what we do is we have a lunchtime meeting and we get everybody collectively to identify what are the top 20 mindsets we would like to adopt as a team that manifest in us loving our patients, serving our patients, increasing our profits, looking after people. And then what we do, that'll cover you for a month of somebody each day chooses a mindset of the day. Okay. And because you don't know, if you've got a team of 6, at least one of them comes in with a bit of a crappy mindset in the morning. And mindsets can spread. And what's positive is to spread the good ones.
Sure.
So we'll do that as a downloadable form after the, available from the webinar.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that they can run that as a meeting.
Question, Barry, sorry.
Yes.
When you're talking about this is a great exercise actually and I'd like to try this out in our practice as well. When you talk about mindsets, I mean, obviously there's the 2 that you've just mentioned in this exercise, but for those of us who want to get more of a vivid imagination, give us some examples of what sort of mindsets you're talking about.
Okay, so I personally would be looking to the areas of my business that are important to me. So I would be looking at things like finance. So I'd be saying to myself, rather than, have you ever been guilty of judging somebody when they walk in, thinking, "Oh, they can't afford this"?
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So a mindset of, for example, people can always find the money that they want for the things that they want.
Correct.
Okay.
That's a positive mindset that will change things. You could have things like, being part of a team is the most positive thing I can be. Even though you might be looking at somebody going, "God, you're a miserable what's-its," because 1 out of 6 is going to turn up sad. But when you all claim the mindset in the morning, you're then able to remind one another during the day when somebody maybe forgets, or when somebody's had an altercation or an interaction with either a team member or a patient that puts them into a bad mindset. Because oftentimes we can generalize. "Oh, bloody hell, Monday morning, not another patient. Patients are a pain in the backside." That's not a positive mindset that serves anybody.
No.
So there's mindsets around money. There's mindsets around people and patients and interactions. There's mindsets about the business, about the boss. People are doing their best. Mindsets are almost like the presuppositions. Mindset number 1, there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. If somebody makes a mistake and does something that doesn't get the result, because everybody goes, "Do you know what? It's okay. And now you need to do something differently." Because then if they do the same thing and get the same results, then, I would say that kind of needs a bit of a kick up the backside. But with the mindset of there's only feedback, you only really want people to get the feedback once, not a second and a third time.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and we could come up with a list of mindsets as well, so people can have a look down and go, "Oh, I hadn't thought about that one."
Yeah.
But I'm keen that actually the team come up with some based around finance, based around education, educating their patients about oral health, about patients' choices, all sorts of different things.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, good. So part of a mindset is effectively what we are representing in our heads. When I said to you, the world is full of beauty and love, you created a picture or a sound or a movie in your head, right?
Yeah.
So if I say to you guys, think about the first time you rode a bike, assuming you've ridden a bike,
Yeah.
you'll create a picture, or sound, or a movie within your head. That's what we call an internal representation. And we do that all the time, automatically. And so the NLP model of communication is basically, a lot of this information was derived by a Hungarian philosopher called Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi in his book called Flow.
Yeah.
External events happen, things like this webinar, right? You're sat at your computer watching the webinar, and you're being bombarded by information and data through your 5 senses. And that's obviously your sight, your hearing, your smell, your taste, and your touch. In NLP speak, we call that visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, or gustatory, if you're American, or gustatory,
Sure.
which is taste and smell. So Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi postulated that we are receiving over 12 million bits of information through our senses every second. 12 million bits of information every second. And we can only process a very tiny, tiny, tiny amount of that, 0.006%, 134 bits per second. So in order to do that, we have to do and it's not a conscious thing that we do, but we have to go through a process of filtering out lots of information. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the first thing we do is we delete a load of the stuff that's coming at us. So do me a favor, look around your room now, right? And look at everything that is red. So if you look around, I can see in my studio here, I can see some words on the wall. I can see a file that's red, books, this, that, and the other. So look at everything that's red, okay?
Sure.
Now, close your eyes and remember everything that was blue. So what you were doing is you deleted all the blue. You had a red mindset on, okay? So you were looking only for the red, you deleted all the blue. At the moment, are you consciously aware of the chair on your bottom?
I am actually.
Okay. Whilst you're maybe consciously aware of the chair, were you before I asked you?
No.
Okay, so there you go. So you weren't aware of it. You were deleting that sensory information until I made you consciously aware of it. So Smita, you made that in your 134 bits for that second.
Yeah.
But at that moment in time, did you delete the information, which was the shoe or the sock on your left foot?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. So now you're consciously aware of that. You're probably not aware of the sound of your computer. And if you listen carefully, you'll probably hear it now.
Yeah.
So we delete. We have to do that because we can only hold on to 134 bits of information per second. The next thing that we do to reduce this down is we distort information. And our unconscious mind distorts information into something we understand, okay? So have you ever heard a creak in the middle of the night and thought, oh, somebody's in the house?
Yeah.
But then actually you realize it was the central heating, or in my case, it was a 4-year-old coming across the landing to get into bed. And so we distort information into things that we understand. And the final thing we do to limit the information that we're aware of is we generalize. This is where isms come from. Okay, so we generalize all sorts of things. A young child is taught how to open a door with a handle. He doesn't have to relearn that every time. He generalizes that every door with a handle opens the same way. Sometimes it doesn't. So that's when he learns another lesson. My 4-year-old Chester, he got mauled by by a dog, actually. We ended up in A&E, puncture wounds, nearly lost his finger, all up his arm.
Oh my goodness.
He has generalized that all dogs are evil.
Yeah.
And he's got a real fear of dogs. Well, are all dogs evil? No. But that's a generalization. This is how we learn. And it's oftentimes based upon previous experience. So we generalize things, which is where all sorts of isms come from in this world. Now, all of that information, right? This goes through our own internal unique filter system, which there's a whole raft of things. And I can tell you now how we change reality by several things. The first thing we change reality, bad memories. So bad memories of dentistry, for example. You know, you look at, they act as filters for patients. For some of us, if we have memories of patients saying no to us, that can give us a bad memory and a filter that says people are not going to choose to have dentistry with me. And decisions and things like that. But time and location, that's a really good one, where it will change the meaning of the information that we're getting. So Smita, let me say, I phone you up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You probably don't answer. I phone you up again and you answer the phone and I go, Smita, hi, it's Barry. Can I borrow £10? And your response is likely to be, what the flip? It's 3 in the morning, Barry. Let's say I phone you up at 3 in the afternoon and you're at the practice. You answer the phone. I say, Smita, it's Barry. Can I borrow £10? And you go, yeah, sure. Are you okay?
Yeah.
You had the same sensory information, which was me asking the same words in the same way for the same request. The only difference was time and location. The time and location of the first one was me being a complete pain in the backside and irritating. And yet the second request, which was identical, I'm a friend in need, and you're finding out what's going on. So time and location is a huge difference to the meaning of the things that are hitting us, all that sensory information. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's like, I could tell you a joke, Aaron, in the pub at 9 o'clock at night, and you laugh. I could tell a joke at work at 9 o'clock in the morning, same joke, and I get the sack. Time and location changes. It makes things whether they're appropriate or not.
Sure.
And then we have things like beliefs. You know, the fabric of our reality is based on beliefs. And then we have our values and our identity. I am not, you know, I'm not worthy, I'm not pretty, I'm not this, that, and the other. All of those things take this information and create what we call the internal representation. That is our picture, our sound, or our movie, or our self-talk. And we have this all day, every day. Okay? Now, this is where we can change our sense of what's going on, or help a patient's sense of what's going on. Because based on their past and their filter systems and everything that's going on, their internal representation of dentists could be, dentists are horrible, dentists hurt, dentists are this, that, and the other. Make sense?
Yeah.
That internal representation, that picture, sound, or movie that you've got, then affects your state of mind, or otherwise your emotional state. If the patient walks in with an internal representation of dentist's hurt, their emotional state is likely to be less than positive, isn't it? Equally, our emotional state, whatever emotional state we're in, can change our internal representation. So if you're in a bad mood, you can have all this information hit you. Somebody can have a conversation, say something to you, and because you're not feeling great, you go, what? And they go, no, I didn't mean that. So you can misinterpret things, can't you? This is where we can miscommunicate. That emotional state also affects and is affected by our body posture. Sure. We know what somebody who looks sad looks like, don't we?
Absolutely.
And we know what somebody who looks confident looks like. They're standing tall and erect with their shoulders back and they're breathing, and often they're smiling. We know if somebody's smiling, they're generally happy. We also know if somebody's smiling, whether that's not a genuinely happy smile.
Sure.
Now, physiology affects our emotional state, and these three things interact every second of every day. And what that does is that drives our behaviors, and our behaviors ultimately drive and get our results. So if we want to change, nobody wants to change behavior, they want to change results. If I want a patient to be relaxed and happy, what I can do is, if we look at that picture on the left-hand side, is I can affect their physiology. I could say, do me a favor, jump up and down and do some star jumps. Have you ever been to the gym? You do some exercise and you just suddenly feel okay.
Yeah.
Now, that's not practical for me to ask my patients, especially my 75-year-old little old lady, Doris, to jump up and down and do some star jumps. But if she comes in a little bit nervous and she's got an internal representation, first thing I can do with a nervous patient is say, hi, Doris. Hey, where was the last place you went on holiday? And how was it? And what was the best thing about it? Aaron, where was the last place you went on holiday? Proper holiday.
Ireland.
Ireland. And how was it?
It was fantastic. Beautiful scenery and lovely food. And rain.
You've got to have a bit of rain to have beautiful scenery though, haven't you? So what was the loveliest thing you saw when you were over
there? Derrynane Beach, I think. Yes. Down in the county of Kerry.
And when you're thinking of that, how are you feeling?
Windswept and relaxed. Really lovely, actually.
Fantastic. Right. So if you were a patient, you're now not in a place of anxious, worried, and concerned. So now is the time that I would then say, right, come and have a sit down and let's have a look at what we're doing for you. You can instantly change somebody's emotional state by changing their internal representation, by asking them a question. I ask my patients about their kids. I ask them about, their new car, or, how things are going. So it's finding something. They go, oh my God, yeah, I had a great time. Boom. They're out of nervousness.
Absolutely.
So that's another way that you can help your patients to change their emotional state, which changes their behavior, because then they're much more relaxed to get in the chair and get on with things. And that affects a win-win for both of us.
Very true. Very true.
So any questions about that model of communication?
No, I think it's a really good little nugget about the holiday, i.e. breaking their pattern of nervousness. And I suppose you could apply that anywhere, couldn't you, Barry, even on a personal level? If somebody's visibly stressed or nervous or whatnot, you could just change their state by asking them,
100%.
a happy place.
It's breaking the pattern, isn't it? So it's just interrupting their pattern of negative moods. And it could be asking a question, it could be bringing humour to the situation. It could be something like that as well. So
absolutely. Let me give you a real life example. When the whole reason I got into NLP was that I went through a really unpleasant and bitter divorce. My wife had an affair with a friend for 2 years. And both my daughters were going through the same thing. And my youngest daughter was particularly affected. And she would be pinching her own arm and, hurting herself. And so I didn't really know what to do here. So I learned this model of communication because it was about the same time. And so she's 6, 7 years old. And I would say to her, okay, Lottie, what I want you to do, because there's no point talking to her. And the worst thing you can do is say, come on, snap out of it. Because that's what we do to people, right? Come on, snap out of it. And the reaction is generally, second word is off. So I would say to Lottie, okay, sweetheart, what I want you to do is stand up tall, put your shoulders back and stick your boobies out. So I'd get a little laugh out of her because I said the word boobies.
Sure.
And then I'd say, I want you to look at the sky. So I'd helped her. She changed her physiology. Okay. So she's now in a stance that we actually would call a power stance. So her shoulders are back, her chin is up, and she's breathing differently because she's now not hunched forward, looking sad and feeling sad. Then I would say to her, right, I want you to picture a pigeon about to fly over you and poo on your head.
Yeah.
And so she would giggle. I've given her an internal representation, which is, nonsensical, but I've enabled her to take herself out of the emotional state she was in into a different emotional state. And then I'm able to say, okay, so how can I help? What's been going on? And then keep her in that situation. And that had a phenomenal effect on the girl's experience when we went through that whole bitterness and the effect that it had. So it's changing state, like you said, and we can do that with our patients by asking them about happy things. So yeah, it's hugely positive.
Sure. And it makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
It does, and it works, So there's also this, some of the communication that we're doing is really based on what we call subconscious influence. The reason I've explained that model of communication, and I know it's time consuming, and the reason it's important is that you're bombarded by 12 million bits of information every single second. And yet you're only consciously aware of 134 bits of information per second. So what's happening to the rest of the information? And if you look at this, we know that the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, and based on Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the conscious mind is tiny. Everything else is subconscious. It goes back to the fact that even though we are consciously aware of the 134, and we're filtering all based on our own past experiences and everything else, we're deleting, distorting, and generalizing, but it's all going in.
Yeah.
And so we need to be mindful of that when we're communicating with our patients, because, if I'm using words and I'm making sure that everything is congruent, my words are aligned, if I say to somebody, do you know what, this lower left 6, crowning it really is the absolute best choice for that tooth. Everything I've just said is congruent. My physiology, my tonality, and the words that I'm using. But what we also need to be aware is that subconsciously, everything else that's going on around us is going in. So if we've got our nurse and their body language isn't right, even though they're not verbally talking to the patient, it's going in. We are picking everything up, if that makes sense. And we're representing in our heads what's going on in that internal representation. And so just to give you that, if you think about that riding that bike, you're either going to have a picture, a movie, a sound, a feeling of it, or internal self-talk. That all makes sense?
Yeah.
So our job is to do what we can to influence our patients to have a positive internal representation. Yeah?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they have a picture, a sound, a movie, a feeling, or a self-talk. So let me hit you with a couple of things, right? In terms of subconscious influence. The first principle of subconscious influence is that your subconscious mind cannot process a negative. Your subconscious mind cannot process a negative. So if I said to all of you now, hey, I don't want you to think of a blue tree. You have to think of a blue tree because you can't process a don't, won't, can't, wouldn't, shouldn't. And we do this all day, every day in our daily lives, right? Don't think of a blue tree. Even for a millisecond, you think of a blue tree. Would you agree?
Yeah.
So when my girls were younger, I had a positive intent that I didn't want the orange juice on the carpet. And I'd say to Millie, do me a favor, sweetheart, don't spill that. Now, she has to produce a picture or a sound or a movie in her head to represent spilling the drink in order for them to effectively recognize what not spilling the drink is. And invariably what I'm doing is causing her to internally rehearse what it is I don't want her to do. What am I increasing the likelihood of happening? Spilling the drink, right? And invariably that's what often happened. Then I'm in a place of chastisement. I told you not to spill it. Well, in actual fact, I actually told her to spill it. So I had a catwalk model. This is her own internal speak. She would get a catwalk model as a friend. She'd get up on the platform, the runway, whatever you call it. She'd have these big high heels and a big skirt. And she'd say to herself, don't trip, don't trip, don't trip, don't trip. She became brilliant at tripping over and falling because she rehearsed it so many times in her head that she just became super at it. Now, we have positive intentions for our patients. We want our patients to have positive internal representations of what we're doing for them. So what do? We say things like, don't worry. Our nurses reassure people. It's okay, don't be scared. You know, these are the things that we're saying to patients because we genuinely want them to be happy and relaxed. We don't want them to worry, do we? Yet if we appreciate that you can't process a negative, what are we doing?
Yeah.
So imagine that's little Johnny, right? And he's never been to the dentist. And you've had this, right? Smita, you've definitely had this, where mum comes in, first visit for little Johnny, and mum says to you, it's okay, doctor, I've told Johnny not to worry. And your heart went, oh, you didn't, did you?
Oh, no. Get out, please.
Now, you didn't verbalize the fact that you went, oh, but you felt it.
I know.
So this is just becoming consciously aware of it.
Yeah.
Other things that we say, don't be nervous. Or, you know, what you do when you're about to give an injection or do some treatment, right? It's okay, it's not going to hurt.
That's a common one.
Yeah, there won't be any pain. So what I want everybody listening to do is to use this and to maybe sit down, do another lunch and learn. There's a lot of lunch and learns coming up. Do a lunch and learn, and as a team, identify the key phrases that you come up with to reassure your patients or to look after your patients and begin to change them into positives. There won't be many. You know, by all means, nick the ones that I've done or come up with your own. But also, if you're running a practice, think about the way that you're giving feedback to team members. Think about the way that you're also giving, you know, information and instruction to your children. You know, I would now say, now that Chester's 4, similar age to when Millie and I used to say, sweetheart, please don't spill that. I now say to Chester, hey, Chester, do me a favor, just hold that cup with 2 hands. I have the same positive intent because I want the liquid to stay in the cup. But I am producing a positive internal representation for him of holding onto that cup firmly, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would like us to eradicate our negatives, right? And when you practice this, you'll find that you'll begin to remove your negatives because then there's no real benefit to having any negatives. Look at our marketing. Look at what you're sending to patients, or look at what you're marketing to patients, because that's a beautiful picture. And yet it's saying...
ruined by the caption.
Pain-free, yeah. Listen, you get double bubble on this one because I can give you fear and discomfort.
Yeah.
Right?
And
now
avoiding the dentist.
Being told to avoid the dentist. Yeah.
And avoiding the dentist. So, you know, they have a positive intent. They're trying their best. Pain-free. So I prefer these. They look very similar. Yet they are generating, thinking back to that model of communication, they are generating a positive internal representation. Now, I don't care if my patient's thinking of a fluffy pillow or lying on the beach or doing whatever when we say relaxed and calm, or being on the Irish beach in the windswept rain.
Dairy name, yeah.
Relaxed and comfortable. I don't mind where they go. I just want them to be as relaxed and comfortable as possible. And I want them thinking happy thoughts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolute positive reinforcement.
Absolutely. So keep your language positive and state what it is that you want to achieve, not what it is that you don't want to achieve.
Yeah.
Great. Let me give you another one. You got any questions about that one?
No, that makes sense. Absolute sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a word that we use. These are things that work subconsciously. And again, you'll know this in a minute. There's a word that we use all day, every day, that it actually is impacting our relationships, our sales with patients, our interaction with our loved ones and our team. And it's 3 little letters and it's one small word, and it's the word but.
Yeah.
Now, but has the effect subconsciously of negating everything that came before it. Now, we know this because if I said to you, Smita, it's been fantastic seeing you today, but I need to go, you only hear subconsciously the instruction that I need to go. Yes. So I've really enjoyed talking to you, but I have to go.
Yeah.
So you will have experienced this in personal relationships as well.
Yeah, of course. You could just say, and I have to go, which will make it very different.
Well, that's where we're going.
Yeah.
It's been a great course, but I need to leave. What about in sales, right? Root canal treatment will save that tooth, but extraction is an option. When I was saying this, what do you think my patients would go for?
Extraction.
Absolutely. Mr. Smith, you've broken that lower F6. I could crown that, but a cheaper option is to fill it. Guess what he went for?
Of course. Yeah. Brilliant.
Every single time, right? I was negating the better option. What about oral hygiene instruction? You know, when I was talking to my girls at the end of the week, and I'd say, "Oh, guys, you did such a great job. Thank you so much. But can you please make sure that the surgery's stopped?" I am now not surprised that they kind of go off in a little bit of a huff because they hadn't heard my compliment of thanks ever so much. In our house, this is a blue job. Not, in other houses, maybe not. So what do? You hit the nail on the head, Smita. What you do is you replace the but. You get your but out of here and you replace it with and.
Yeah.
So in just a couple of those examples, you nurse well with me today, you change the but to an and they hear the compliment. So when I learned this, the girls would then happily go and start stocking because they had heard me say thank you so much because I was genuinely grateful. And when we change the and, you're giving equal weight to the first and the second parts of that sentence. In patient education, you switch it and you're giving equal weight. They're much more likely to start flossing. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So that's changing your buts to the and. And when I learned this, the 6-year-old became the butt police. So we'd be having conversations and she'd go, "Oh, Daddy, you said but." And it was really playful and she caught me out. And so that's what we did is you've got to be playful with this and you've got to allow people to go, "Oh, you said but," so that they can catch you out. There is one slight exception. I'd like you to become more mindful of when you're using your buts. I'd like you to use your buts on purpose. So in actual fact, if I use this as an example, they're much more likely to extract the tooth because I'm negating the better option. So one way of increasing sales is to flip that butt. Is to flip it over. And instead of saying root canal treatment will save the tooth, but an extraction is an option, we're going to use the but purposefully. Extraction is an option, but root canal treatment will save the tooth.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
That lower F6, Mr. Smith, do you know what? It's lost 40% of the tooth. I could fill that, but a much better solution for the long term is to crown it. My crown sales went through the roof. Now, it's all based on integrity and knowing that actually there was at least 40% lost and that there were some hairline cracks and the best solution was to crown it. And because I'm negating the cheaper, worse option, I'm increasing the likelihood my patients would select the better choice.
And you're flipping your butt.
And I'm flipping my butt. It's a gymnastics move, I'm sure. The other way of flipping your butt is self-motivation. I don't know if you guys have ever felt this, but I've used to say things like, "Oh, I want to go for a run, but it's raining outside."
Yeah.
That was my exercise. And so
nothing wrong with that, Barry.
I know, I love that. But, maybe not every night of the week, given that it's raining and in Ireland. So you flip your butt, right? You change that around. And you can say, okay, I'm going to catch myself out. It's raining outside, but I want to go for a run. Yeah. So consciously, you are much more likely to find a solution to what it is that you want to achieve.
Yeah.
And so pretty much, I'm looking at time, right? And I'm wondering, we're near an hour. Got any questions about that and the use of the word but?
No, I think that makes absolute sense, except the last one. I would say it's raining outside and I want to go for a run.
Okay. So would you go for a run or would you find a different way of doing it?
Well,
No,
yeah.
we should go for a run. Most
I'd
definitely.
go for a run. But no, I get
that's
what you're
great,
saying.
right?
I think flipping your butt is a very, very useful analogy, and I think certainly for the extraction versus root canal, or implant versus extraction, or implant versus bridge, etc. It's a great analogy.
Yeah, and you remember you can string. The first thing to do is to remember to be playful, and there's no such thing as failure, only feedback.
Yeah.
And you can string these things together. So, Mr. Smith, you've broken that tooth. You've got several options here. I could root canal treat it. I could extract it, and you could leave it as it is. But realistically, in order to it to be functional and have no breakdown elsewhere, and nothing else changes, the best option is for you to consider an implant. Is this something you'd like to find out more about? So you're negating the first two options. You're still informing them, and we're going to make sure that we're ticking all of the medical legal boxes.
Yeah.
By explaining, obviously, you can have nothing, you can have a denture, you can have this, that, and the other. And then we're going to use our but to go, this is what I'd recommend. Sure. And this is what you already know subconsciously.
Yeah. Okay, right. Makes sense.
Good. Do you want another one?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have this, again, our subconscious mind. When I go on my computer, I kind of go into Google, but my own internal search engine is my noodle. And there's a real benefit to being vague, using vague phrases, which I'll show you in a minute. Because if I give you a concrete concept, you can either accept it or reject it immediately by your conscious mind. It's a conscious effort. So if I say, you sat in your room and I say your computer, you know exactly what I mean because it's there in front of you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The difference is that if I use something vague, like all the things you've learned, that's not a concrete concept. You have to, in order to understand this, your subconscious has to go off and contemplate it. So all the things you've learned, well, what does that mean? This is the vague question. It could be all the things you learned at school, Smita, or all the things you've ever learned within dentistry, or all the things you learned on holiday in Ireland, or all the things you learned today.
Or in life.
Or in life. So this speaks to absolutely everybody. Because if you don't have a computer, it's easy to reject or accept it, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas when you ask this question, being vague means you're searching for the answer and you come up with your own answer. For example, you mentioned Donald Trump earlier on, Aaron.
Yeah.
What we know is that in the primaries in whenever it was, 2008, something like that, when it was Barack Obama and John McCain, Barack Obama they did some research and they believed that Barack Obama was using 58% subconscious influencing language. Mm. So John McCain would say, let's say John McCain had 2,000 people in a rally, and he'd say, we need to change the medical system. Well, maybe 10% of the people in the rally are cheering because they're going, yeah, but the other 10%, the other 90% want other things changed. Barack Obama was uber clever, had been well trained, because he would say things like, America needs change. People came out of those meetings in tears going, oh my God, he was talking to me. We need to change the medical system. Or somebody else said, he's going to change the education system. And these vague things are what build people's understanding in their own heads of what it is that you're trying to influence. They fill in the blanks. Yeah. Great advertisers do this. So, Smita, you're a runner.
Well,
Aaron, do you run?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so a large
we both
percentage
think we
of my
do.
family don't.
Yeah, as we get older, it gets harder.
We think we do, but go on.
So if this company had come up with, because they were a running company originally, weren't they, right?
Yeah.
And if they just said, just run, how much of their market would they be segregating and missing out on?
Yeah.
This vague thing speaks to everybody. Just do it. Just do what? Doesn't matter. You're going to fill in the blanks in your own mind. And this is why they're so big in just kind of apparel. They're big in yoga, football, everything, because it speaks to everybody. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Same with this. This is really fuzzy, but at this point in time, Avis were about to go bust. This is a good few years ago. And Hertz were the biggest thing on the planet. And so Avis came up with this, We Try Harder. And they shot up the charts. They still remain second, but they spent, I think it was something like 100th of the marketing budget that Hertz had. And because they said, We Try Harder, people filled in the blanks. And actually, a lot of people just assumed they meant Hertz, when in actual fact they didn't. And so marketing is a great area for being. HP's never invented anything. What is the best a man can get? So how can we use this to our advantage? If we understand that being vague allows people to fill in their own subconscious blanks, we can use this when we're talking to patients or marketing to patients. With me, you'll be so much more comfortable. So you would say more comfortable than what? Every patient fills in their own blank. We use this on our marketing material. We make sure that actually, you know, I don't mind whether they think that that's a comparison to the practice up the road or a comparison to, you know, the shoddy service they just had when they went for lunch or whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm just not saying we care more than whatever. I'm not filling in the blank for them. So being artfully vague is a very clever way of speaking to the person's subconscious, and when they're in the chair, when we're looking to sell, is not necessarily making comparisons. Whiter teeth, whiter than what? So again, I would like anybody listening to start to watch their butts. Be mindful of when they're using the word but. Be mindful of being artfully vague and utilizing that, sitting down and thinking, what can we come up with that speaks to somebody's subconscious? Because it's really powerful. Watching their negatives, eradicating the negatives, and really only using positive language in their verbal interaction, but their written interactions as well. And that way, these whole things improve. And this has had a massive effect at home, work, and at play for me. Sure. And that's pretty much it.
That's great.
Question.
Barry, yeah.
Thank you, Barry. No, that's really useful. Being artfully vague, I think, is really good if you also, for a practice, if you want to create your own strap line. And I think that's a really useful lesson. I'm just thinking about that a lot. It's produced a lot of food for thought. So,
Barry, I've got a question. You've obviously been using these techniques in your own practice for a number of years. Okay.
Yes.
How's that actually manifested, and how's that impacted your business and your delivery of care?
I'd say on many, many levels. I haven't marketed for 10 years. Okay. I have a way of requesting. There's also influence principles. Now, I have to say, everything that I'm sharing, of course, could be used in a negative way if you're that way inclined.
Sure.
But for me, I'm creating win-win situations. I am purposefully influencing my patients to know that there are the best options for their dental health and their dental appearance, and therefore encouraging them to select the best things for them. It's still their choice. I'm just increasing the likelihood of them being aware that there are some better things available, rather than what I used to do was negate the good stuff. I wasn't serving them. You see, interestingly, the word sell, when I was a kid, I used to think selling was a dirty word. I was kind of taught that at home. And we kind of believed that salesmen were kind of second-hand car salesmen, and they were pushy with double glazing and stuff like that. When I started to learn this, what I was taught was that the word sell comes from a Norwegian word, selje, and selje means to serve. And so I'm now proud to say that I am a salesman because I'm serving. And my aim is to forge a win-win situation for everybody involved. And so the net effect of that is that the relationships with my patients are incredibly strong. I get a lot of referrals. I ask for them. There's a specific way that I do that, and we teach that on the 2-day training. But I'm also aware that although I don't do implants personally, and I don't really do a great deal of short-term ortho, that's what we want to build over the next few years. The turnover of my business is over 7 figures. And so and I'm single-handed with a hygienist. and I work 3.5 days a week. So it's been hugely beneficial. I was in the NHS for probably 8 years and then came out of it. And I did that in a gradual way. And so it's had a massive effect the last 10 years.
Okay.
It's remarkable.
No, that is remarkable, because there aren't many, I know, dentists who walk the talk and deliver, as you say, which is fantastic. And I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and experience tonight.
Likewise, for me too. It's been very useful.
How can people know more about what you're up to and
how they can benefit further?
How can they benefit further and learn further from you? I know you mentioned your courses.
I would
about that.
Yeah, I would love people to come and share. I've got so much to share. There are a number of avenues at the moment. So I run a 2-day communication and sales training course. That's called Influencing Smiles. We've launched the Confident Dentist Academy. The website is theconfidentdentist.com. And there's kind of information on there and ways of reaching out and touching base with me. In addition to that, we've just for 2019, there's a lot of interest in some of the sharing that I've got. I've developed, because I'm a master practitioner of NLP, I'm also a master hypnotherapist. I've developed an injection technique with Septidont, where patients are completely unaware that they've had an injection. And that's something that we're spreading the word on. So there's plenty of articles in the press. I've got now a monthly column in the Probe. So I'd invite you to go and read that. But I'd really love you to come and join me on my 2-day training course. The feedback that we're having has blown me away and is phenomenal. And so, go on the website and reach out, and it'd be great to meet people.
Well, Barry, I'd like to say a huge thank you for sharing your information and knowledge and experience tonight. I will, after this webinar, will be recorded, and I'll share it with you, and we'll put the relevant links on the blog page, and people can seek out and find out more about wonderful stuff that you're doing.
Thank you ever so much, guys. Thanks for having me, and thanks everybody for listening. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you, Barry.
Good night.
Good night.